world of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. It's the David Knight Show.
As the clock strikes 13, it's Monday, the 20th of April, year of our Lord 2026. It's 420. I guess we'll be seeing a post from Musk. Well, there's more chaos on the way after an on again, off again, on again, off again weekend at the dire straits of Hormuz. And we've also got Trump, true to form. He's now rolling back the things that he did to gain the trust of his MAGA people when it comes to vaccines. Of course, what do they expect Vax Daddy to do? You know, he puts in RFK Jr. says, I'm here to restore trust in the institution. Well, that's that's the wrong mission to start with. And now we see from additional personnel how he's walking it back, just like he did with Planned Parenthood, just like he did with fluoride and so many other things, the war especially. We'll be right back. Stay with us. And of course, another one of those things that he walked back very quickly was his opposition to FISA. And why would anybody think that he would oppose that anyway? You know, he was angry that it had been used against him, but he's perfectly willing to do that for the Machiavellian industrial complex, what many people call the military industrial complex. And but the good news is that they mustered opposition to him. Both conservatives and partisan Democrats opposed Trump and stopped it for now. This is what Trump had to say about trading off your liberty for security, the very thing that the founders always warned us of. For security deserve neither. And as I've said, history has shown us that they get neither either. Because to the extent that you give up your liberty, to that extent, you become a prisoner. Prisoners are never secure. They may be safe behind bars, but they're never really secure in their own private life. And of course, they've given up their liberty. It is a zero-sum game. It is a fool's game. And to give up your liberty for the promise of national security, that is the greatest foolishness. They're not even promising you security for yourself. Well, we had Thomas Massie took a victory lap about this, helping to shut this down. Here's a story from his perspective.
All right, so you guys have
successfully
blocked the 5-year extension for FISA tonight. You consider this a win? It's a 30-day... when is it?
2 week.
2 week. Okay, yeah. Even better. All right. And why is it important not to extend FISA? I mean, keep in mind, this is what they used to spy on President Trump's campaign. It's a warrantless spying program. Why do you think that they are continuing to try to force this through?
It's a deep state.
It's a deep state.
It's what it does.
Here's the briefing that we're never going to get. Because, they try to bring us into all these classified briefings and, tell us how dangerous it is to have warrants to spy on American citizens. The briefing that we're never going to get is, hi, our agency has been given too much power by Congress. We need you to take some of it back.
And today I went in the SCIF and saw 2 top secret documents that showed this program is getting worse, not better.
Okay, so how does this, I just want to relate this a little bit to the average American. How could this affect somebody like, your average Kentuckian, the place that you represent? How could FISA being passed again for 5 years?
If you get on the government's list, bad list, naughty list, regardless of who is in the White House, right? they could put your name in this, find things about you, and then go recreate another evidence trail to discover that. Because they're never going to say they used FISA to find this stuff out about it. And then they go, you get a random stop, traffic stop. Oh, it's Burchett.
Burchett.
Burchett's doing his own proof of life video.
Hey.
Hey man, you know they
What do you think of FISA?
in a Hollywood studio. We really didn't get the
Burchett's
He's got his video going.
looking for aliens over there.
Yes.
That's all Burchett wants to talk about is aliens.
Actually, both of
defer.
you.
I'm gonna
You defer.
I believe in illegal and the kind from outer space.
Okay, how about FISA? Are they spying on aliens with
I don't
FISA?
believe in FISA.
You don't
no,
believe in
no.
FISA either?
The only reason aliens don't come down here because there is no intelligent life.
Especially in Congress.
I love this guy. I love all these people. These guys are
we'll see
great.
you, Nick.
So we have some actual, the very few, there are 535 of you guys, but very few good ones. So just say that.
Yeah. All right.
So thank you guys. Have a good night.
All right, good. Now that was Nick Sortor, the guy who broke the stories about the Somalis in Minneapolis, which the Trump administration still done nothing at all about. Nothing at all. What they did was they doubled the amount of money that they're giving to people like that. It's just crazy. And yet you got the people who are so angry with Massie. He did the right thing again. He's always opposing Trump, and when he opposes Trump, it's because he's doing the right thing and Trump is doing the wrong thing, whether you're talking about the lockdown and the stimulus checks or the right, over and over again. Massie's on the right side, Trump is on the wrong side. But here's Cat Turd, and this was something that he did years ago. This is in 2024. Cat Turd said, "Make no mistake about this. They want this so they can spy on their political opponents, try to find crimes of citizens they disagree with politically. Anyone who votes to renew FISA is commie scum." Well, that would be the guy that you cheer in the White House is commie scum. And quite frankly, I do believe that is a big part of it. When we look at Elon Musk, yet another tweet about universal basic income. And the guy that is on his donor list, Donald Trump, is out there doing, exactly that with the COVID lockdown, the stimulus checks. We're moving the Overton window for universal basic income. When Elon Musk, first thing he did in politics, gave $1 million to Andrew Yang, who was running for president as a single issue candidate at that point in time. And his single issue was universal basic income. That has been a core issue of the technocrats. They wanted their plan, whether they can pull it off or not. Their plan is to take everybody's job using artificial intelligence and to put everybody on universal basic income, just as Michael Bloomberg, the Democrat who was running for president, said when he was running for president, the smart ones of us are working out how we're going to take everybody's jobs. We just got to figure out how we're going to keep them from coming after us with guillotines. Yeah, you keep working on that because people aren't buying it. Larry Fink understands that, the World Economic Forum. He's now taken Klaus Schwab's place there, and he had this to say.
This is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time. For many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. We hear all about the
Yeah, you jumped the shark with COVID,
How does
didn't
that
you?
play out in an age of populism? How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust?
Yeah, we need to trust World Economic Forum, just like
To the critique,
HHS and the FDA.
I believe in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next.
They still trust you too
The
much.
Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward. It has to regain that trust.
If they really understood, they would be grabbing the guillotines at this point in time. Catherine Austin Fitts lays it out. This whole thing is set up to establish a control grid.
Everything this administration is doing to build a control grid. And from the moment they got into office in January 2025, they've been operating at high speed to build the whole thing. And we can talk about what that looks like. But the other one is called, was Jeffrey Epstein the father of programmable money? And I would recommend reading it. It points you to a Substack that is the best thing I've ever read on Epstein after Whitney Webb's books. And what it describes is how the Rothschild syndicate works. And which is basically the Epstein was part of that syndicate, if you want to call it. And that's very much equity in and around the central banks. So it does a very good job of sort of describing the syndicate. And if you look at this administration is very much run by that syndicate. And whatever is going on in the Middle East is very much what that syndicate wants. And so the question is, what's really going on?
Yeah.
And what I will tell you is the official explanations, as usual, are baffling. And what I can't tell is whether the goal is intentionally to shut down the straits, or we're looking at the most remarkable act of incompetence on the part of the U.S. that I could possibly imagine. So, I never want to underestimate the possibility of incompetence, but usually incompetence is in air covers. It's a story. So let's look at what's happening. And let's go back to Gaza for a second. For 2.5 years, what we've heard is that a group of people who are under complete sanction in the financial system can still, Hamas can still field weapons and armies, and an empire that can slant drill oil and gas and mining, miles underground, can't deal with tunnels under Gaza. Okay. Makes absolutely no sense, because if you understand what it takes to transact, buy weapons, ship in weapons, do all of that, that can't operate given the surveillance and control systems that are in place, unless somebody wants it to. So you're looking at a game that allows you to basically kill, genocide, and take the land, because you need an excuse to do that. You can't, the empire never likes to go in and say, look, we're just going to kill all of you and take your stuff because we want to. And, and then our insiders are going to make a fortune using taxpayers' money to build a new development. You can't say that. So you need a cover story, right? Okay, so just like we had this baffling cover story, now we have the Iranians who, despite extraordinary sanctions, have been able to build a very impressive military capability, and the United States is helpless to stop them. Now, here's why that is baffling to me. You have the U.S. military has exponentially more funding than any military on the planet, and they so for the last 2 decades they've had anywhere from $500 billion to $1 trillion. Now it's up to $1 trillion a year. And what's the most important thing in the central banking warfare model that a military needs to do? What do we know? If you're going to be the reserve currency, what's the number one thing you as the military must be able to do? You have to protect the trade routes. You have to protect the sea lanes. The control, the trade model backing the sterling as reserve currency and the U.S. sterling was the Navy and policing the sea lanes. And the Bretton Woods model was an open trade model where everybody, the U.S. said, look, we'll protect the sea lanes. Everybody gets to trade as long as they play ball with the rules. And we're going to globalize and create a highly interdependent, massively interdependent global society, right? And global economy. So there's a wonderful interview, I'm sure I've told you about it before, in 1994 by Sir James Goldsmith, where he talks about why doing this is certifiably insane. But he.
Yeah, it all is. That is always the question. Is it just insanity or massive incompetence? But of course, you can go back and look at the Vietnam War. What was it? Incompetence? Well, on one level, you look at it and it's like, oh, this is just unbelievable what they're doing here. And yet, we looked at it for a long time. It appeared to me that the purpose of it was just to have permanent war, so they could train the military in a live fire exercise, so they could test their equipment, so they could then sell their equipment to other people. So there's different reasons for this. When we look at what's going on with Gaza, when we look at what's going on with Iran, again, Israel is at the center of this, and she said they don't want to just come in and say, we're going to kill everybody here and take all your stuff. Well, Israel doesn't have a problem saying that. They just want to have Iran's help to do that. So if they continue to attack Iran, Iran has promised they will blow up the rest of the Middle East. And so they continue to attack them. So is that incompetence? Everybody in the world can see it. No, that's intention. In the same way that Mark Levin goes to Donald Trump and says, oh, so they closed the Strait of Hormuz, you need to do a blockade as well. And so they have the ceasefire, and Iran says, well, we've opened up the Strait of Hormuz. And then the Trump administration says, no, we still got our blockade going. Well, if you're going to do that, if you're going to blockade our ports, we're going to close the Strait of Hormuz again. And so after that, over the weekend, we had Iranian attacks on ships after they said it's closed. And then you had the U.S. government attacked a ship, took out its engines, boarded it, that type of things. Piracy on the high seas. Trump, as a matter of fact, I mentioned this last week. I had somebody who wanted to give me a take. He was an author, and he wanted to give me his take on this. And his take was that the founders confront all this. And Jefferson, looked, what would Jefferson do, right? Instead of what would Jesus do, WWJD. What would Jefferson do? Well, we know what Jefferson would do. He attacked the Barbary pirates, right? There in Tripoli. We still sing about it. The Marine hymn on the shores of Tripoli. I said, but the problem is that here we are the barbarians. We started a war of aggression. And here we are the pirates. We are attacking and seizing ships all over the world. And so the analogy fails on that key point in terms of a just war. Trump argued that he and Americans should be willing to sacrifice their Fourth Amendment right to privacy in exchange for security. National security, not even personal security. This doesn't make any of us personally safer. All of these war games are making all of our lives riskier. We all risk the fact that when you go in and you pummel civilians for a prolonged period of time, you kill family members, you kill babies, you do this intentionally, those chickens are going to come home to roost at some point. We're going to get terrorist attacks. And then that'll be used not as a mea culpa. There won't be any repentance from the people in power. Instead, they will use it to beat the drums of war for more of this stuff. Meanwhile, there'll be Americans who will be killed for real. And it may be a false flag attack. It may be something like 9/11. While parts of FISA were illegally and unfortunately used against me in the Democrats' disgraceful witch hunt and attack in the Russia hoax, perhaps to be used against me in the future. But I am willing to risk the giving up of my rights and privileges as a citizen for our great military and country. Yeah, that's a fool's bargain. And the founders knew that. They called that out. And now here we have the primary fool that they all warned us about. Donald Trump was the guy that I'd have thought they were talking about George III, but they're actually talking about this guy. His ego, his thirst for power, and his madness, quite frankly. So he said last night, they were talking about, this is Massie said, last night between midnight and 2 a.m., they tried to pass two bad versions of FISA. Both would have allowed the feds to unconstitutionally spy on Americans. We stopped both versions, but the fight isn't over. Eventually, it was decided to give them 2 more weeks to fix FISA. So we're still waiting to see what happens. They'll keep coming back. That's why we need to have people who are going to oppose Trump and who are going to oppose this national security state. I certainly hope that against the odds of the Zionist millionaires that Thomas Massie stays in. For this purpose alone, he's worth his weight in gold. And that's increasing as the days go by, right? During the debate in 2024, Trump, who was then a Republican presidential candidate, demanded Congress terminate FISA. He said, screaming in all uppercase, "Kill FISA. It was illegally used against me and many others. They spied on my campaign." Well, Mike Johnson is seeking to fulfill Trump's demands, of course, because he is loyal to Trump. Mike Johnson is a traitor to the Constitution, a traitor to Americans, but he is loyal to Trump. And that's really all that matters, he thinks, for his career. He's going to lose his majority in the Senate. I hope he loses his seat. I don't know what his situation is, but we have these situations. People like Lindsey Graham and Mike Johnson just seem to go on and on. It's one of the things that convinces me that it is a selection and not an election. Well, Trump has already killed the penny. Now you've got mainstream media saying, well, the nickel needs to go next. Yeah, the purpose of all this, as I said from the very beginning, is Trump is trying to destroy cash. That's the whole purpose of this. I'm absolutely positively convinced of this. So this is an article talking about, we lost so much money printing the penny, and it costs us even more to print the nickel because of the metals that we've got in it. We'll change the metals. They have literally debased the currency, putting instead of silver dimes, instead of real nickel, they have, instead of real copper, they consistently change it. You don't even need to coat it with that. Just have some kind of a token. It could look like Chuck E. Cheese. I don't care. Maybe they could promise to put Trump's picture on it. He's going to do that on the paper money. And the thing is, they don't talk about what does it cost them to print dollar bills, for example, right? And, they don't last as long as the coin does. So what are they really getting at here? Especially when they can create money out of thin air. What difference does the cost make on this, right? We use multi-million-dollar missiles to stop a $1,000 drone. So what does cost mean to the government? Does any of that make any sense whatsoever? No, not at all. Cash preservationists warned that the death of the 1-cent coin might see dire consequences. Coin shortages at checkout counters, confusion over how to pay bills, and ending in 0 or 5, and higher prices as greedy retailers begin rounding everything up. Well, let's have more of that now, right? And so we won't even have things ending in 5. So Trump killed the penny because the government lost money every time it pressed one. Nickels are money losers too. Well, we can make this same argument for all the bureaucracy. Every time these guys issue a regulation, look how much we've got to pay the bureaucrats to do this. How much we have to pay the bureaucrats to enforce it. Why don't we just save some money and kill the bureaucracy? And then we can kill the regulations that cost people even more money. The government lost $40 trillion, but now they're worried about pennies and nickels and dimes. Don't believe it for a minute. Nickels are bigger losers. While it cost 3.69 cents to make a penny in 2024, for every nickel, the government spent 13.78 cents, a loss of nearly 9 cents per coin. Since when, there's no intrinsic value in the dollar. I mean, it's not like, again, when you get away from coins and you start talking about the paper money, there's absolutely no intrinsic value to it. What a specious argument this is. It's absurd. The government spent about $18 million minting pennies in 2024. And the mint lost $85 million. So what? How much did they spend on paper money as they devalue that currency even? Nickels cost more to make because they got 75% copper and 25% nickel. Pennies look like copper, but they're actually made mostly of zinc. So make the nickel out of zinc instead of copper. Copper is more valuable because of its other uses in terms of electrical wiring and things like that. The question, though, is not just that. The question is Trump's fantasy tariffs. How much did that cost us? Well, we're not allowed to know, right? So the question that was asked by Newsweek is, how do you get your tariff refund? Well, that's a rhetorical question. If you're a consumer, you don't get your money back, right? And if you're a business, you've got to sue the government to get it back. This in spite of the fact that the Trump administration lied. They went through and had an absurd, quote unquote, legal basis for the tariffs. Absolutely absurd on the face of it. And then when the court cases started, they assured the court, well, we're going to keep the tariffs on while we litigate this in court because we can always give the money back if we lose. Then they lose and they say, well, we can't give the money back. You're going to have to sue us. And that's where we are right now. A February Tax Foundation report found that Trump's tariffs equated to a tax increase of $1,000 per household in 2025. But the cost will not be directly reimbursed to consumers, only to importers. and the companies can choose to pass the savings on. There you go. No help coming from your wonderful government. No help coming from Donald Trump. He stole $1,000 from your house last year, and he isn't going to give it back. You know who may give it back? Companies, those evil corporations. Federal Express is talking about how they are looking to give back money to customers. FedEx, which collected tariffs directly from consumers on imported packages as a customs broker, has made a direct commitment to return refunds to the customers who originally paid them. But they're going to have to sue this crooked government, these liars, deceivers, and thieves in Washington of both parties, but especially Trump. They're going to have to sue them to get their money back, and then they say that when they get it back, they're going to pass it on to consumers. They said our intent is straightforward. If refunds are issued to FedEx, we will issue refunds for the IEEPA tariffs paid to the shippers and the consumers who originally bore those charges. So good for them. That's integrity, and they're doing it despite the fact that it's a massive paperwork hassle and have to have a lawsuit as well. Again, Trump said he would refund it, but he was lying. So Customs said in the court filing, over 330,000 importers paid a total of roughly $166 billion in IEEPA tariffs across 53 million shipments. Not all of those payments qualify for Phase 1 refunds. And so you've got some other companies as well. Costco, you've got Ray-Ban, and some others are trying to get their money back. Kawasaki. Costco filed a federal lawsuit challenging all IEEPA tariffs as unlawful, asking the court to order full refunds, including interest on all tariffs paid. But again, the government doesn't like to give recompense to people that they have ripped off. As a matter of fact, when they start listing some of the goods that have been hit with this, cookware, coffee, textiles, eggs, why are we importing eggs? Well, again, it goes back to our wonderful government. The USDA, under both Biden and Trump, Brooke Rollins kept this program up until she could coerce them into giving chickens mRNA injections. And so they were killing mass slaughter of chickens, so we had to import eggs even. You talk about being self-sufficient. It's just, when you look at it, the incompetence is so basic and so extensive that, like Catherine Austin Fitts said, it really does lean towards an evil conspiracy, especially when you look at how they operated in lockstep. Same ridiculous things at the same time throughout the COVID psyop.
We really are moving towards a point where you want to have some self-sufficiency. Yeah. You never know what's going to happen.
That's right.
And I fully recommend that you, if you haven't already, look it up. You can look it up on YouTube, probably on Rumble too, but there are all kinds of different growth methods for plants that take up very little space and give you a lot of efficiency. So you can start preparing in that way. If you've got space, chickens are a great thing to raise. They give you eggs, and then you can eventually eat the birds. So,
yeah, there was a funny essay from J.D. Hall, and it was called "I Raise Chickens." And he writes, he's a Christian pastor or former pastor. I don't know if he's got a church now or not, but he's a great writer. And he starts out talking about all the things that Jesus has done, right? He spoke the worlds into existence and all the rest of the stuff and everything that he did on earth and everything. Then he gets down like a punchline and he says, "And I raise chickens." He says, that's not a joke. That's a reminder I tell myself all the time. I think I'm too big out there. I just raise chickens. That's all I do. That's a great way to, it really is a humbling experience to get those chickens and get dirty. And of course, they can be very threatening to your health as well if they cause you to fall over the hill, like Karen can tell you.
Yeah. They may result in a broken leg.
That's right. So again, as I said before, Elon Musk out there, and what he had to say specifically, again, pushing universal basic income, but he relabels it as universal high income. Oh yeah, why not? I mean, let's just lie to people. Let's tell them everybody's going to be rich, right? This is the fatal conceit of both Marxism and what George Gilder called the neo-Marxists, the Silicon Valley billionaires. Karl Marx thought that because of the Industrial Revolution that there was no limit to material wealth. It was just, free stuff. And we just have to make sure that it is distributed equitably. So let's use the government to do that. People in Silicon Valley that are pushing this universal basic income and pushing AI, you hear them saying this all the time, especially Elon Musk. It's going to be infinite wealth. I mean, the robots are going to do everything for us. And, of course, you're going to have to buy those robots from him in order to do that, right? And so the only thing that's left is for us to figure out how we're going to distribute this. Of course, we'll do it through the government. And it'll be high income, not even basic income. Why is it then that when they do these UBI experiments, they always at a, might be Stockton, California, or some local area where they say, we're going to pick, let's pick 1,000 people or something like that. And we'll give them $1,000 a month and see how that changes their life. Well, okay. Maybe it will, but it's not enough that it's really going to change their life. But we could see what happened with COVID. That was part of the experiment, part of the PSYOP. And, it wasn't all that much money, a couple of thousand, and then they wait, like another 10 months or something, give another couple of thousand. But still, the perception was greater than the reality. And it affected people psychologically. So, yeah, it is a PSYOP. Universal high income, he says, via checks issued by the federal government is the best way to deal with unemployment caused by AI. And I think the best way to deal with it is to shut down these data centers. That's even better. Instead of giving them all of our water, instead of giving them all of our electricity and making it too expensive for us to even light our homes, how about we just shut down AI and we keep our jobs? I'm thinking more and more that the Amish were so far ahead of their time.
I like how his answer to this is, well, I want to keep playing with my toys and building my infrastructure. So how about the government just gives people a bunch of money?
Yeah, that's right.
How about you taxpayers foot the bill and we'll just redistribute everything?
That's right. And this is why we don't want that. And this is why we don't want AI in the way that the government's rolling it out. Because they are absolutely obsessed. Whether you're talking about the EU or the US or local states, they're absolutely obsessed with digital ID, to use the internet, to use everything. That's where it begins, right? The end of anonymity, the end of free speech. It is this digital gulag, and it is ready to roll out in the EU right now.
To me, this is almost like saying, well, I just want to keep firing my gun randomly in directions. So why don't you just wear, the government will just give everyone body armor, it'll be fine.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's something far more sinister underneath all this. Ursula, who is fond of lying, the EU president, said that they're ready to go with their age verification, their platform and so forth. And folks, this is something that is, of course, we all understand the surveillance aspect of it. We all understand how they constantly say, we got to do this and that to protect the children. They've always got a MacGuffin, and usually the MacGuffin revolves around protecting children. But the reality is, as we talked about this last week, you see coming out more and more from these, in order to support this digital ID, you've got Zuckerberg out there saying, well, Apple and Google need to embed it into their operating system software where they know who these people are. And then all the applications have to work with this. And so what we're seeing here is not only are they ending privacy, not only are they ending anonymity, and of course, all of those are going to reflect on your freedom of speech, but they are also ending their competition. If you have to have all kinds of know your customer stuff in every app that you do and every operating system that you do, these kinds of regulations are going to make it impossible for startup companies to open up in competition to the people like Zuckerberg and Musk. So it is a way for the biggest of the big to shut down their competition. And this has always been one of the key driving factors behind government regulation. It's always been companies trying to shut down their competition. And this is as big and as in your face as we've ever seen before. We've never seen anything this bad. As a matter of fact, as we were talking about on Friday, the bill that has come out in Illinois goes beyond anything that even the Trump administration had imagined in order to help artificial intelligence. What they want to do is offer immunity legal immunity, just like they were a vaccine poisoner or something. And yet, only to the biggest companies. If you spent more than $100 million on your language model, if you have killed more than 100 people, if you have defrauded people of more than $1 billion, well, then you get special immunity. But if you kill 99 people or you only steal 900 million or something, you don't get it, right? So go big or go home, or go to the pen, I guess. But it's immunity for the biggest of the big out there. There should never be immunity for anything that any corporation does. If they're reckless and harmful, and especially when you look at this artificial intelligence, you can read between the lines and understand that because they're talking about nuclear, biological, and chemical, that means that they're giving a liability protection, extra liability protection to artificial intelligence, because it's going to be doing the bidding of a criminal, totalitarian government that is in charge of everything. They're going to give them the tools to autonomously kill people. They're going to give them tools to nuclear weapons and chemical weapons, all the rest of the stuff. And if the software does its thing, then the companies are going to be held harmless. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about major catastrophes. More than 100 people killed, more than $1 billion lost, and on, and nuclear, biological, and chemical. What the government is planning to do, folks, is just horrific. And again, we don't need to be afraid of this. If you're a Christian, you understand what is it, but we need to oppose it, right? Fear is the opposite of faith. As a Christian, you don't fear. Your faith is in God. You know that God controls the universe. So first thing you need to do is to pray about this, because God can turn these weapons against the people who seek to use them against us. But we also need to do our part. And as one guy that I used to, church I used to go to, he used to say, pray as if everything depends on God, and work as if everything depends on you. And I think that's good advice.
I'd also like to point out, I can't think of a single technology really that's been put back in the bag. They have quashed variations on technology that were less profitable for major companies, but they don't put things away. Once it's out in the public, once it escapes containment, it doesn't go back. If you've read Industrial Society and Its Consequences by Ted Kaczynski, he didn't have any answers. His entire thing was, well, maybe if we kill people and we keep killing people, anyone that tries to do this again, they'll stop eventually. That was his only answer in Industrial Society. Just keep killing people.
Went full Terminator. Yeah.
Which is not an answer.
It is a Pandora's box, isn't it? Yeah. And of course, when we talk about that, it's like Palantir is probably the best example of the Palantir technology. They should have called it Pandora instead of Palantir. But
you can possibly get these things out of the hand of government. You can possibly pass laws to restrict their access and their ability to use them to monitor people. But AI and things like Claude for coding are not going away. It's here to stay.
And the best we can do is to make sure they've got liability. That's why the government is going in and saying, oh, no liability for this. If it's really big, no liability. Just take a look at Palantir, for example, right? They are going to start using Palantir for air traffic control. Just imagine what happens when the AI starts hallucinating with planes that are out there. Right there, you've got more than 100 people killed in each plane that they crash into each other or whatever. So it's a really crazy world that they're designing right now. A lot of Trojan horses out there. So protecting the children is always a seductive pretext for launching otherwise socially unacceptable policies. And there are few more socially unacceptable policies than the controlled death of online privacy and anonymity. But Ursula, who is fond of lying, says that the app that they've created in the EU is necessary to make the online world safer for children. As a matter of fact, they even refer to it as for parents to raise their children. They are raising the children with the village, and yet they claim that this is a tool for parents. Parents already have tools. There's a lot of tools out there that will monitor what your children are doing. There's a lot of obstacles to, you have to go out and buy a phone. You have to pay for it every month. There's your tool right there, parents. Why are you doing that for a child? So anyway, she also claims to have herself carefully listened to parents. I'm not a parent myself, but I listen to them carefully. To protect children from the dangers of the online world, the EU needs a harmonized approach. Well, who's going to protect them from the dangers of a harmonized government? She likened providing proof of age to access online platforms. She said it's like the supermarkets that ask people for ID before they can purchase alcoholic beverages. But of course, they don't do that when they sell them gender mutilation and sterilization, do they? But they point out in this article, they said, well, here's the difference, right? Users would not just momentarily display their ID like when they're buying alcohol. They would have to give their ID to third-party companies, raising major concerns over who receives, stores, and controls that data. As a matter of fact, stop and think about how this is going to multiply exponentially the number of people that have got all of your personal information that can use that then to defraud you and others. But there's a lot of European companies that are ready to jump on this. Denmark, France, Italy, Spain, Greece, Cyprus, and Ireland are going to be the first ones to jump in all of this. They said, and then to really sell the idea, she goes back to, wait for it, COVID. Yeah, you like that COVID control so much. And that's what we had in mind the whole time. I said that was what they had. It's all this traffic light stuff, right? Everything being done as a permission society. We all remember the COVID pandemic, she said. Our world came to a complete standstill. But we came out of lockdowns, and as vaccines were available, and the commission came up with the COVID Act in record time. It was 3 months to help bring us back to normal life. We had an app for that. Yeah. With a scan of your COVID certificate. You'll remember we suggested that economic activity can now be an integral part of the framework's functions. So she's openly admitting that the commission is following the exact same principles and models behind the COVID PSYOP and the COVID pass. And quite frankly, as I pointed out in that commercial that we still run on a regular basis, I pointed out the common pass and all. That was started by the World Economic Forum. They were the ones who came up with the prototype and said, this is what we want to see happen. And then the EU came up with their own version. Other governments came up with their own version. But that was their common idea, that there'd be a global repository for everybody's information. They're also telling you that it's going to be totally voluntary. And again, we've seen this lie before. India is a good example of it. The guy who is currently head of India, Modi, launched something in India called Aadhaar. Excuse me, Aadhaar. And it's like aardvark. It's got 2 A's at the front of it and 2 A's at the back of it. As a matter of fact, it's even more aardvarkish than, but that's what they should have called it. Anyway, it was Bill Gates that was a big part of that. They said, well, it's voluntary, except for the poor people of India who wanted free health care. They wanted free income and things like that. They had to volunteer for the Aadhaar number in order to get all that. And then as time goes by, it becomes more and more mandatory for everybody, not just the people who are on welfare. It's been launched over a decade and a half ago. The Indian authorities have struggled and failed to make it fraud-proof. The world's largest digital identity system, and again, comes from Bill Gates. And if you remember, and I pointed this out time and again in 2020, he had for the longest time had a project that he called ID 2020. Very important for Bill Gates to make sure that everybody had an ID, right? There's one thing that people need. They need it more than food, and that's an ID, an ear tag, so I can track them, right? And so that was one of his first. He had ID 2020. Everybody, everywhere gets an ID in 2020. Well, that's basically what they set up. Again, she's going back to COVID PSYOP. And then he's got the other one, Immunization Agenda 2030, IA 2030. And the motto that they actually put on their website was everyone, every age, everywhere. vaxxed. And we could add as a sub to that, with every vaccine I can imagine, right? That's really where this is all going. So they're telling everybody, well, you won't be required to do this, but we all know that is where it's going. Meanwhile, the brave new autonomous world takes shape on America's highways. And this is happening even as a full self-driving car, courtesy of Elon Musk, just tried to drive a passenger. That's what we'll call the person because they're not the driver. Just tried to drive the passenger into a train. And the person turned it off and grabbed the wheel just in the nick of time. There you go. That is a metaphor for this whole society, isn't it? Well, this is one for you, Travis. The world is going ginger as humans are evolving into redheads. Say scientists. Scientists are always saying something stupid like this.
I guess I'm just ahead of the curve.
That's right. You're red out of the curve. A new study found the number of people with red hair is growing. And say this is evolutionary progress over the last 10,000 years. Thing is, I see the populations that are growing in Asia and India and China. I didn't see any redheads when we were in China, did you? As a matter of fact, Travis was...
Only when I looked in a mirror.
Travis was quite the oddity when we were in China. We had a lot of stares. Every single one of us had a different hair color in the family.
Yeah.
So, I was gray, Karen was blonde, and Lance was brown hair, and you had red hair, and everybody's like, "Whoa!"
I definitely garnered the most attention.
So anyway, this is they're thinking that there is some genetic superiority to being redheaded, and I would say I think Travis is a good example of that. I think he has some excellent genes there, but somebody who is one of the things that they've said about the Irish is a stereotype that they really do like their whiskey. I don't know if that's true, but we do have Kash Patel, who is not a redhead. He is one of those people from India that has decidedly not red hair, but he apparently is, you've got a lot of people who are saying that this guy is a party animal. I don't know why they would say that. I mean, it's not like we saw videos of this at the World Cup, right? He uses the FBI jet as his private personal jet, and he goes to all these different sporting events and acts like he's a college freshman. But there was a story that came out over the weekend from The Atlantic, and he is immediately threatening to sue because it is very defamatory. Now, whether or not it is untrue, that remains to be seen in the court. But the Atlantic article had quite a few sources who say that he has been AWOL quite a bit because he's been incapacitated, that he has been on drinking binges, that they had difficulty waking him up. In one particular case, they dispatched a breaching team to break the door down because he was so out of it they couldn't get in contact with him, and they couldn't get the door open either. But he is saying none of that is true, and he intends to sue. So we shall see. I think when you look at his behavior, when you look at the FBI, as a matter of fact, I would say it appears that there is a competence issue there, whatever is behind it. Well, Jake Tapper and Elise Stefanik were sparring over Trump's whole civilization will die message. And it was kind of interesting what the two of them had to say. As a matter of fact, she tried to defend that as something that was reasonable to say. Tapper says, "You believe wiping out an entire civilization is genocidal and nobody should make a call to do such a thing?" She said, "Why, yes, of course." And he goes, "And that's why the question I asked, which was, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate your university's code of conduct? Yes or no?" she said. And again, we always go back to this, don't we? When somebody does something that is criminal or morally reprehensible or whatever, and this is both of those, what is the response? Well, somebody says, well, these other people did it, right? This is what I call whataboutism. Well, what about Biden who did this or that? Or what about the Democrats who did this or that? But really, at the basis of it, if you stop and think about it, these people are trying to excuse their behavior by moral relativism. Well, I can do this because somebody else did that crime and got away with it. That only works for politicians, by the way. You don't get to say, well, this guy robbed banks, so I can go rob banks too. What about that guy? You robbed banks and you haven't caught him yet, so I guess I can go rob some banks. It doesn't work that way for anybody else, but it does work that way for the people who should be the ones held to the highest moral standard because of the power that they have. But the bottom line is that there is no absolute standard. And so what they're doing is they're moving everybody in the political world down to the least common denominator. So Tapper asked her, said, so what do you think when President Trump threatened to obliterate the entire Iranian civilization, not even just the regime? And so she said, and what did it do? She said, it brought the Iranians to the table. It led to a ceasefire. Well, that remains to be seen. But he pointed out that when Trump said the whole civilization would die, that wasn't to say that he wasn't saying the regime will be wiped out. He then noted that he found it interesting that a 20-year-old college kid on a campus who was yelling from the river to the sea, he said that's worthy of condemnation, but what the president said is not worthy of commendation from Stefanik. So what they're saying is from the river to the sea, they're saying throw the Jews out of Palestine from the river to the sea. And yet, the Jews have been saying that as well. We go back and we look at what is now happening to the state of so-called free speech. It truly is disturbing to see how this is tracking. We have a college student, speaking of college students, they were in a group chat, and she didn't want to go to this thing or something, and she said, well, if we're lucky, Bibi will bomb the area and we won't have to have this meeting or something, right? That was her bad joke. But, that was what they're talking about, the fact that Bibi is bombing all these different, Bibi Netanyahu is doing that. And since they had opposed Israel, maybe he'll bomb the meeting and we won't have to worry about this. She's now been charged with a felony for saying that.
It's unfortunate because I'm assuming she's a senior going to graduate.
This is the judge of this kangaroo court.
To graduate.
A 23-year-old FIU student charged with a felony over messages she wrote in a school group chat. Gabriela Saldana facing a judge Thursday morning. According to her arrest report, this went down in a WhatsApp group chat of about 215 students, where students were discussing an event that was to take place Friday at the Ocean Bank Convocation Center on campus to make their capstone presentations. An FIU police officer read some of the statements in court.
The exact words utilized was, there's going to be a bomb in the Ocean Bank Convocation Center, and it's going to be at Jonathan's fault, one of the members in the chat.
7 News obtaining some bits of that chat. It seemed the student wanted the event rescheduled and wrote, quote, Netanyahu, if you can hear me, drop some bonbons for us capstone students in Ocean Bank Convention Center. Other students wrote they didn't take that text lightly. She later in the chat wrote,
how could you take that
I wrote
seriously?
A dumb joke that should not have been made.
I can understand your position, Ms. Corey, and you're saying this is a joke, but to an objective person, it's not a joke, and there would be enough for probable cause.
No, to an objective person, this is obviously a joke.
Lady, your court is a joke. You are a joke, not a judge. That's just ridiculous. Does anybody think that Netanyahu would call in a strike because this person who is opposed to him says so? And as
Netanyahu notably takes his advice from 20-year-old Latina college students all the time. I've seen him do it. Who knows?
Who are anti-Zionists.
Yeah, of course.
Tapper said, I just think a call for genocide on a college campus and a call for genocide made by the president of the United States, they're both bad, right? He said. And yet you think that one of them is okay and another one is not, right? And this is it. Again, the point is, and he's not even talking about this case, Jake Tapper isn't. But the point is that while the president can call for genocide, while the president is dropping who knows how many tons of bombs on Iran, while he initiated an act of aggression against Iran from the same people who have been aggressively bombing civilians for years in Gaza, and while he makes a very credible threat to destroy the entire civilization, especially because people like Mark Levin and Jonathan Pollard are pushing him to use nuclear weapons or to allow Israel to use its nuclear weapons. And so that is a very credible threat, especially because he began his war of aggression, killing 160 or 70 children, young girls at a school. So Tapper then accused Stefanik of changing Trump's words by arguing that he was targeting a regime. He said, so what is wiping out an entire civilization? Is that a regime change or not? This is, again, semantics that are there. So we're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we're going to take a look at some of Trump's vax betrayals that are there. And because he made a big betrayal for the Maha people, and they're very concerned about this. And I think rightfully so. We should also be concerned about what is happening with the protection of the vaccine industry. But this is just a warm-up for what they're going to do with artificial intelligence. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
APS Radio delivers multiple channels of music right to your mobile device. Get the APS Radio app today and listen wherever you go.
Welcome back, folks. We've got a comment from Freetard. Says the justice system is so bastardized it generates crime. Needs demolition.
We have a story that we're going to cover later this week. Actually, we're going to have Sheriff Mack on with us. An interesting story about what is happening with a sheriff and a judge. I got a judge who wants to release this guy out of prison and put him on an ankle monitor. And the sheriff says, well, we've done that before, and he's violated. It's got like a rap sheet that's 35 issues long, and some of it's been done when he's been on supervised release. And so the question then becomes, well, yeah, in this particular case, I think we can kind of sort that out. He's appealing it. Sheriff is appealing it to another judge, which I think is the right thing to do. But then the question becomes, since men are not angels, we have sheriffs. But sheriffs are not angels either. So do we want to have them have complete control over when people are released? I mean, over and over again, we look at these people that are the illegal immigrants they said they're rounding up. And again, remember, the vast majority of the people that they're lining up and rounding up of these authoritarian police state tactics are not violent criminals. But the ones who are, you see this and it's like, yeah, this guy's got this rap sheet of 2 or 3 dozen things out there and they're violent crimes. Why is this guy on the street? Why does ICE have to pick him up on the street? Well, it's because the so-called justice system has released him when he should still be in jail. Well, we're going to get back to the news, but before we do, real quickly, I just want to thank some of the people who have supported us on Cash App and on Zelle, and say thank you to them. And I want to take the time to do that because these are the people who make the program possible. We have on Cash App, Jerry Y., someone that goes by the name of the Mad Head Doctor, and Robert A. Thank you so much. And on Zelle, we have a longer list of contributors on Zelle. We have William W., we have Michael L., we have Mary M., Lyndon H., Christopher S., Adam D., Michael P., Josephine C., Susan L., Jonathan M., Ramon G., Chris T., Rose G., Susan L. again, Julie L., Gregory I., and Benjamin R. And some of these people were very generous with their contributions. It's a small number of people, but because we've had several of them who've given large contributions, we are at 5/8, and we're at the 20th of the month, so we got another 10 days to go. And so I really want to thank them for all of their support. And if you're a listener, you should thank them as well, because they're the ones who make the program possible. Let's talk about Vax Daddy now. I'm the father of the vaccine guy. Who would that be? You got all these people talking about Maha, and I said from the very beginning it's a joke. Do you not realize what this guy did in 2020? And he's shown no evidence of any repentance. As a matter of fact, in spite of the fact that they created this this game to gain your trust, Maha, and even RFK Jr. said that. He said, well, my mission here is to restore your trust in the institution. It's not to get rid of harmful vaccines, right? It's not even to get rid of that untrustworthy institution that has been untrustworthy since its creation, the FDA, the CDC, HHS. You shouldn't trust them at all. Do your own research. And so now you've got Trump's latest pick to lead the CDC. As somebody who has long been a public health official, pushing vaccines, pushing them in the military, pushing mandates for anthrax vaccines and other things that have had a long history now of failure. Dr. Erica Schwartz, Trump's nominee to lead the CDC, a physician, a former Coast Guard officer and public health official. She said, when I was a military physician, my job was all about readiness. It was all about public health prevention, vaccines, early detection. And she had a big role to play in the pandemic PSYOP, pushing these PCR tests and things like that. What a surprise. Who would have known that Vax Daddy would put in a fellow vaccine prick? I mean, who would guess that? Well, you might have had a clue on day one when he begins his second regime with pushing mRNA and artificial intelligence together, right? Let's team up these two aberrant, dangerous perversions of technology. Let's put them together, and we'll have one of my Zionist billionaires who'll put it together, Larry Ellison, who's going to bring it all together for you. So, and then when you look at RFK Jr., what a sellout this guy is. And this, by the way, is an article that was done by Children's Health Defense. They have not sold out, and thank you to them for staying the course and keeping their principles. RFK Jr., on the other hand, has fully prostituted himself. Listen to this. He writes, thank you, President Trump, for nominating Dr. Erica Schwartz to serve as CDC director. I look forward to working together to restore trust, accountability, and scientific integrity. Well, maybe if you want to restore trust, the first thing you need to do is to do something about these vaccines that you know full well how harmful they are. And you've talked about it for a long time, but you don't do anything about it. And you don't hold anybody accountable with it either. Not Fauci, not anybody. As a matter of fact, Fauci given a medal by Vax Daddy on his very last day in office. And I know, I say that. I've gotten several people writing, no, he didn't give him a medal. He gave him a presidential commendation. It's like, okay. It's a distinction without a difference, folks. I don't care if it's like I said before, I don't care if he gave him a beanie that said the best vaccine doctor anywhere, or if he gave him a ribbon, or if he gave him a medal, or if he pinned something on his chest. I don't care what it is. He honored what he did. He put this little elf in charge of the government, gave him the podium, and did everything this guy said to do. And he made him the master of the PSYOP and rewarded him for that, commended him for it. So, again, when you look at the three people that were put in there, one of them has a good background in terms of pushing back against this vaccine insanity and the COVID stuff. The other two, however, do not. So 2 out of 3 are people that definitely should not be considered as part of this Maha fantasy. During a congressional budget hearing, RFK Jr. hinted at the upcoming announcement. At the time, he said, We're bringing in an extraordinary team that's gotten applause from both Republicans and Democrats. That should tell you right there. This is a bipartisan establishment hack. And so the CHD, Children's Health Defense, however, is holding steady with all this, even though RFK Jr. has sold out. Aaron Siri, who represents several vaccine injury victims and delivered a scathing presentation on the childhood immunization schedule to the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices last year, criticized Schwartz for her, quote, long track record of supporting vaccines and vaccine mandates. He tweeted out, he said, Trump's pick to head the CDC, Erica Schwartz, would likely be a disaster. Schwartz had led nationwide COVID-19 vaccine deployment, and her long track record of directly issuing rights-crushing civilian and military vaccine mandates, including mandating injections of smallpox and anthrax and other things like that. Political economist Toby Rogers wrote on X, he said, Florida Surgeon General Joseph Ladapo, who made waves last year for announcing the end of vaccine mandates in the state, would have been a better choice. Anybody would have been a better choice. But again, he didn't even go far enough, in my opinion. I mean, first of all, how do you just stop at the point of saying, well, we're not gonna mandate it and we're not gonna recommend it? Good, okay. But you're going to allow people to do this. And I've used the analogy over and over again. It always reminds me of a movie that I saw many years ago. Not a good movie, but it had a scene in it that always stuck with me. The movie was called Montenegro. And it's about this bored, kind of crazy housewife. And at one point, she's got this basset hound, and she puts some poison in the milk. And she says to the basset hound, she goes, now I put poison in this milk. If I were you, I wouldn't drink it. But I'm going to let you make the choice. And she puts the milk down in front of the basset hound and said, that's what Ladapo and DeSantis are doing in Florida. It's exactly what they're doing. And it is crazy and criminal. By the way, the dog didn't drink it, but you had a lot of people who took the vaccine. Joseph Ladapo, courage, visionary leadership during COVID, wrote Toby Rogers. He said, instead, the White House is leaning towards Erica Schwartz, who ordered the fraudulent PCR tests that were part of the co-op of the COVID PSYOP. I guess it was kind of a co-op, wasn't it? CNN reported that she also promoted vaccination during her tenure at the U.S. Coast Guard. She led disease surveillance and vaccination programs, and she wrote Coast Guard policy on pandemic influenza and other viral disease outbreaks. Yeah, she's one of them, folks. She's not somebody who supports real health, doesn't support informed consent. My job, she said, yeah, go ahead.
Expert in vaccination and surveillance, the perfect person for the CDC.
That's right. Yeah, we control you with disease and crimes, CDC. Yeah, so my job is all about vaccines and early detection, she said. Well, we should be able to detect what Trump is about, shouldn't we? I think if you haven't detected what this guy is about, I don't think you're much of a detective. Dr. Mary Talon Bowden said that the COVID-19 pandemic left a festering wound in our country. Well, I think that's actually an understatement. I think what it started was gangrene. And if we're not going to amputate these politicians that have attached themselves to us, it's going to kill the entire country, and perhaps already has. We may have gone too far to be able to amputate these people. Schwartz is part of a mixed bag of selections for the key CDC posts. Brenner previously questioned the safety of COVID-19 vaccines and has publicly supported the MAHA movement. These other two, though, have adapted their public positions in favor of vaccines and of the official pandemic response. As a matter of fact, one of these people was at Walmart. Until 2020, he was president of Walmart's Health and Wellness, overseeing the expansion of COVID-19 testing and mandates at Walmart stores. Then he became CEO of a bio startup. They call it BioIQ. publicly supported vaccination as part of the COVID-19 risk reduction, so-called. He also promoted testing before attending family gatherings during the pandemic. Yeah. Don't go home for Thanksgiving because the Walmart guy says not to.
At least don't go home until you've bought a kit from Walmart that says you're allowed to.
Right. That's right. Yeah, because that's what his company was selling. BioIQ focuses on diagnostics and at-home testing. So don't go home before you do at-home testing. Immunization and vaccine programs through Walmart. And as people have been pushing this out, Trump's CDC pick, they even got a meme of it. You can probably pull that up, Lance, if you got that. Trump's CDC pick, the queen of mandating vaccines. She mandated smallpox, anthrax, and flu shots on U.S. military and backed it up with threats and discipline. And so, I put out that, I responded to that, I retweeted that and said, yeah, the father of the vaccine, Trump, the mRNA prick. I said, why can't MAGA see who this guy is and who he always was? He's a New York City Democrat globalist who's been brought in to accelerate the chaos for the fourth turning and to prepare the way for authoritarian government and to take down our society, especially for the middle class and the individuals that are out there, as he boosts these different government agencies as well as the large corporations. So let's talk a little bit about the bribes and the BS coming from Trump. Well, we had one of the things that happened over the weekend, besides the back and forth over the Strait of Hormuz, there was a scoop from Axios saying that the U.S. was considering a $20 billion cash for uranium deal with Iran. And of course, Matt Drudge put that up at the top, and going to bribe them for $20 billion. And then right underneath it, he puts down, remember, we had Obama did this, I think it was 2015, 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, I guess. Obama did that, and he did $400 million. So Trump is going to bribe them with 50 times more than Obama did. But again, the nuclear stuff, we're still just 3 weeks away from a nuclear bomb after 30 years. The U.S. would release $20 billion in frozen Iranian funds in return for Iran giving up its stockpile of enriched uranium. Again, isn't it interesting, this bipartisan approach? This is how they have destroyed peace and prosperity and financial system that has actually been their lifeblood, right? Their lifeblood is not from the taxes that they suck off of you and I, these blood-sucking parasites that we call politics. It's not really the tax revenue that makes them rich. It's this financial system that they put together. And just like a parasite destroys the host, these people are destroying that, the thing that has hosted them, the petrodollar and the SWIFT system and all the rest of the stuff, using it as a weapon against anyone that they don't like with their geopolitics. And so they've got a massive amount of Iranian funds that have been frozen, just like they did with Russia. And that's what they're going back and forth with. But I looked at that, and it's like, if this is true, think about the fact that we didn't need to give them $20 billion if we could actually buy them off with this, if that's what happens with this. We didn't need to write them a check for $20 billion. We didn't need to go around and get a bunch of foreign cash, which is what Obama did. Obama went around all these different foreign banks and got, Swiss money and French money and all the rest of the stuff because they had prohibited him using U.S. cash to give to them. And so he went around and got foreign cash. Same kind of stuff you see Trump doing all the time. Oh, that's different. You didn't say I couldn't use Swiss francs and French money to give it to him. It's just I couldn't give him dollars. So that's the kind of prevarication that we come to know and hate with Donald Trump. And of course, Obama was involved in that to start with. So above and beyond the fact that he did that to ransom about 5 people, right? Would Trump then give them 50 times as much in order to release not 5 hostages, but 1/5 of the world's oil supply that's been taken hostage in response to this war of aggression by Trump? I mean, this just beggars belief. It's like what Catherine Austin Fitts had to say, that this is either the most incomprehensible failure of incompetence that we've ever seen in our lives, or this is all intentional for other purposes. And I think we all vote for option number 2 with all of this. But they denied this, and then there were more issues over the weekend because part of this agreement, as the Strait of Hormuz opened up, I think, was it Friday evening, I think? Stock market goes crazy. Oh, yeah, they're going to jump on. It's funny how there's all these traps for bulls, Usually think of bear traps in real life, but here it's all these bull traps. These people are so eager for some positive news that they jump on this thing with all their hooves, and they wind up getting hoisted by their own optimism that's there. But Trump wrote on Truth Social, he said, no money will change hands. But he didn't refer to whether or not they were going to unblock Iranian funds. So again, when you look at the tens of billions of dollars that we've spent in terms of weapons expended, and the weakened defense, because we have gotten rid of a lot of our most sophisticated weapons, which take a very long time to resupply, assuming that we haven't cut off our ability to be able to resupply them by Trump's capricious whims with tariffs and things like that. Assuming that we can get the rare earths to remanufacture these things, it's going to take a very long time to do that. They're incredibly expensive. And that's not even counting the cost in human life, because that doesn't matter to them at all. But you think about all that, and American lives as well as Iranian lives, and could have avoided all that by just releasing their funds. Is that right? To try to get the nuclear weapons, because that's where he is right now. They've exhausted their ability to do this by force, so they're going to try to set up a deal to do this. According to 2 sources, the U.S. was ready in an earlier stage of the negotiations to release $6 billion for Iran to purchase food, medicine, and other humanitarian supplies. The Iranians, however, demanded $27 billion. The latest numbers discussed by the U.S. and Iran is $20 billion, the sources said. One U.S. official said that was a U.S. proposal. The other U.S. official described the cash for uranium concept as one of many discussions. So uranium and Iranians we got here. But I guess as the old joke goes, we've established what Trump is. He's just haggling over the price, right? That's what he's saying. Is like they're open to a deal. Let's make a deal. No. You want 6? You want 26? I'll give you 6, and let's start moving this in. But again, we've established that they're willing to release money to get the nuclear weapons that they said they had to have, that they said they had to destroy by force. Well, it shows you that that's not always the only option. And it's not a good option either, especially not when you are the initiator of that aggression. Under a compromise proposal now under discussion, some of the highly enriched uranium would be shipped to a third country, not necessarily the U.S., and some of it would be down blended in Iran under international monitoring. Unlike Israel, which doesn't let anybody monitor anything about its nuclear program. So, when you like that video that I had of David Icke, I think he was the one who said it. When we look at this, how many times has Iran attacked its neighbors compared to the wars that the U.S. and Israel have had? Who is the aggressor here in this particular thing? Who needs the monitoring? Who's got the nuclear weapons already? The U.S. demanded in the last round of talks that Iran agree to a 20-year moratorium. Iran said, no, we'll do it for 5. So again, what about Israel? Are they going to put a moratorium on this? Are they going to open up for international monitoring? So we go back to Obama. It was cash on a plane, foreign currency that he did at the time. And again, we've seen this over and over again. We saw Ronald Reagan with Iran-Contra. We haven't seen Oliver North. I don't know. Maybe we have. I don't watch Fox News. So maybe he's been on Fox News again. I don't know. But the guy that was right at the center of the Iran-Contra stuff under Reagan, you go back and you look at our history with Iran. It is not a 47-year history, as I've said many times. It is a 73-year history. It began with us overthrowing their elected government and putting in a king who reported to the CIA. and who had a vicious secret police, the Savak, that was trained by the CIA and Mossad. And then we've added to that over the years. And we had the back and forth agreements with the Reagan administration, Bill Casey, the OSS, who was one of the founders of the CIA. And he goes there and he says, don't release the hostages until after the election. Don't release them, as a matter of fact. Hold them, even if Reagan wins, we want you to hold the hostages until he's inaugurated. Then you release them that day to make us look good. And in response, what we'll do, all those jets that we gave the Shah that you need spare parts for, we'll give you those spare parts. You pay us in cash, kind of the reverse of what Obama did. You know, Obama sent plane load of cash and everything. Well, I don't know how much cash they got from the Iranians or what kind of currency it was in or how they transported it. But they took that cash and what they do? Well, of course, what do they want? Always a war. So, hey, you know, we got a bunch of cash. Let's have a war. So they had a war with the Iran-Contras, all the rest of the stuff. Meanwhile, the CIA is creating crack cocaine epidemics in California while they tell everybody they got to fight the war on drugs. Don't you love our government? I just can't articulate my contempt for the American government sufficiently. You shake my fist or pound the desk or whatever it takes. The money was flown to Iran from Obama on wooden pallets stacked with Swiss francs, euros, and other currencies in the first installment of $1.7 billion because Congress had prohibited the cash, so they did it with foreign cash. That makes all the difference in the world, right? U.S. officials said cash had to be flown in because existing U.S. sanctions ban American dollars from being used in a transaction with Iran, and because Iran could not access the global financial system due to international sanctions that it was under at the time. Well, the cash transactions took place on the same day as release of Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian and other American administration officials. They insisted the payment did not constitute ransom and that there was no quid pro quo for the payment. In other words, it wasn't a conspiracy. It was just a coincidence. You must be a conspiracy theorist if you think that there was some kind of a quid pro quo. What's the matter with you? You probably don't believe that Trump was shot in the ear either. You're one of those people, aren't you? Yeah. So Trump is saying that Iran got a little bit cute and they can't blackmail us. I think they can, actually. We're just negotiating the price right now. So again, when you look at this, all this stuff that is happening over the weekend, this is the genius idea of Mark Levin, who said, don't let them blockade the strait, you blockade it. And we'll say it's us. It's just like, you can't fire me, I quit type of thing. So they want to, of course, Levin and his boss, Netanyahu, want to continue and enlarge this war, just like they have with Gaza. They want to eradicate everything and come in and kill everybody and steal the land. That's the plan, folks. Has been for a long time. They're out front about it, actually. U.S. security sources claim that Iran carried out at least 3 attacks on ships. And, of course, we did one as well. I say we, this supposed government of the United States. I don't know who's actually, whose government it is, not mine. They don't pay attention. I didn't vote for them, and they don't pay attention to what I want. And this is the Sun. This is the way that they report this. No bias at all here, is there? Tehran's tyrants warned that they would continue to block transit through the vital trade route as long as the U.S. blockade of Iranian ports continued. What a childish way of propaganda. The bottom line is that Trump is blockading it. The Trump tyrant is blockading it, just like the Tehran tyrants are. Got a couple of tyrants, and we're stuck in the middle. Tyrants on the left of me, tyrants on the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you. He says, it's working out very well, Trump saying. So he's getting exactly what he wants. Perhaps he is. Perhaps that's not just boasting. On Friday, Tehran had said the key trade route would remain fully open for the final days of the 2-week ceasefire. But then the U.S. refused to lift its sea blockade, so they blockaded again, and then both sides started shooting at ships. This is just beyond childish and stupid. It is deliberate. Iran's deputy foreign minister said, we don't want to enter into any negotiation or meeting which is doomed to fail. and which can be a pretext for yet another round of escalation. So the U.S. had tried to sabotage peace with their own blockade of the waterway. He said, if you're going to violate ceasefire terms and conditions, if Americans are not going to honor their words, there will be repercussions for them. And of course, we saw this with Lebanon right away. Meanwhile, this is one strange conspiracy that popped up. LifeSite News, which is a conservative, traditional Catholic website, said Archbishop Vigano accuses Hillary Clinton of pushing out the previous Pope, Benedict, right? This is the guy before, I can't even remember the name of that communist, Bergoglio or whatever. I don't even remember his name. So the one before Leo, who is this leftist communist pushing environmentalism and everything else like that. The guy before him, this is a conservative Archbishop Vigano, conservative both politically and religiously, and he said that it was Hillary Clinton and John Podesta that caused the shutdown of the Vatican banking ATMs, which are thought to have pressured Benedict the 16th to resign. So I guess they run off of ATMs just like Paula White and the TV evangelists of the Protestants. So the interference of Hillary Clinton.
Wasn't it pretty unheard of at the time for a pope to resign? I thought they die in office pretty much every time except for this guy.
I think there'd been one or two had resigned and, thousands of years of history, but it was very, very unusual. So what he is reporting is, he says, the interference of Hillary Clinton and John Podesta went so far as to block the Vatican banking transactions via the SWIFT network. See, it's always about weaponizing money, and this is what should concern us personally so much about what is happening with us. We've already seen debanking being done by large banks. I've been debanked by PayPal and what is the other one? Venmo. And Venmo, no more. Can't do the vendor stuff no more at Venmo. But, when you look at the banking stuff and the controls that they're doing, this is what they do to Russia, what they do to Iran, and what they do to people that they don't like politically. And so they said no sooner had the Trump administration cut off the stream of funds that USAID, that's CIA, was channeling to the U.S. CCB and various bodies of the American Catholic Church to facilitate immigration, then an open war erupted on the part of those cardinals and bishops whom Clinton, Obama, and Biden had, until that moment, showered with money. And so what they're pointing out here in LifeSite News is the fact that much of this immigration stuff that was open borders that was there, that was a lot of money that was being channeled through Catholic services and Lutheran services. So you had a lot of denominations that put themselves as allies of the open border Democrats, and they were richly rewarded in terms of money. So then Cardinal McCarrick paid scant heed to the pro-abortion, LGBTQ plus, and gender-related policies promoted by quote-unquote Catholic Democrats. The mere suggestion of excommunicating pro-choice politicians was deemed an intolerable intrusion by a hierarchy that had made itself abundantly clear that had no intention whatsoever of taking such a step. And so just like we see people like Franklin Graham, who's now out there humiliating himself, trying to make excuses for Trump, as Trump is trying to portray himself in a very too cute way, to use Trump's phrases, a little bit too cute in his messianic symbolism, comparing himself to Jesus. Now, Franklin Graham is trying to make excuses for him. He has lost a lot of his cheerleaders, though. Al Mohler has pushed back against that. But just like you got people like that, they have, the Democrats have their own tribe of court jesters who dress themselves up in religious garb, right? And that's what they're pointing out here. While there were undoubtedly those who instrumentalized the message of the gospel through the pseudo-messianic delusions typical of American televangelists, and that's what we're seeing with Trump, there are also most certainly those within the Vatican who do not hesitate to instrumentalize that very same gospel to lend a veneer of legitimacy and morality to the agenda of ethnic replacement and the Islamization of the West, as well as pushing Agenda 2030, which is what the previous Pope did significantly. That's what all that green stuff was about. It was the climate MacGuffin. Nor should we forget the doctrinal ratification that Bergoglio, the previous Pope, bestowed upon the pandemic farce and on mass vaccination, just as he did for climate fraud. And I gotta say, when you look at people like Franklin Graham, he did the same thing. He bestowed upon pandemic farce and mass vaccination a pseudo-religious validation, and so did Al Mohler, quite frankly. These guys were quoting this Yale psychological study that came out in 2020 that had been a double-blind test. They had not done that with the vaccine for safety or efficacy, but they did it for their psychological aspect of it. And they're quoting it like Pete Hegseth quotes Ezekiel 27:15 or 25:17, except they were more accurate in their quote of the Yale psychological stuff. But now Trump is losing some of that support, interestingly enough. So it's interesting that the previous Pope, as I point out here, had a cringe-worthy ceremony, they say, at Castel Gandolfo. How about that? Castle Gandalf. I would like to see that. Is that Castle Gandalf that have all kinds of Lord of the Rings symbology there? I don't know. We're going to take a quick break, folks, and we'll be right back.
You're listening to The David Knight Show.
Tell Alexa to add the APS radio skill and have access to the best channels anywhere. From country to blues, classic hits to news, APS Radio curates incredibly diverse playlists for you to enjoy. Get details at apsradio.com.
All right, welcome back. And we got a couple of comments here. Did you want to read them, Lance, for me?
Sure. Gardner Goldsmith says, how about they abide by their constitution and acknowledge that there isn't supposed to be a CDC?
That's exactly right. And just keep going. Above the CDC and the FDA is the HHS, and there's no authority for that either. There's nothing in the Constitution. Wouldn't it be nice if we did go back to we can always dream that we go back to the Constitution, but it's always important, even though the politicians have shredded, burned, and buried the Constitution, it's important to point out what is in the Constitution, because they swear to uphold the Constitution as a condition of their authority. So they may have power, but they don't have authority. And it's always important to point that out. Go ahead.
MOE Studios says it's 666D chess.
There you go. Yeah, it's Antichrist chess. That's what we got going on here. Yeah.
Papa Garcia asks, is David against freedom of choice?
No, absolutely not. I don't know what we're talking about. In that context, maybe because we were talking about what was happening with the other things. I think, when we talk about abortion, folks, that's not choice, that's murder. You realize that is not your body that you're making that choice about. And you go back and take a look at the pandemic, and who are the people out there who had been pushing it for the most part? Typically, they had been aligned with Planned Parenthood and other people like that. So all these people say, well, we're pro-choice. You should be allowed to kill your child, which, by the way, I think it was the UK that just said that a mother can do her own abortion, which translated means that you can kill your child when it's born. That's infanticide. And that'll be no legal penalty if you do that in the UK. But it is not your body. It is somebody else. It happened to be in your body for right now, but it is somebody else. Different DNA half the time, a different sex, and sometimes different blood type, I think. But it is a different person. When we talk about somebody where they have the choice of taking a vaccine, yeah, certainly that should be your choice if you want to do that. But the way these things are marketed is absolute fraud. And we see that typically with what is being done by the pharmaceutical companies. They make all kinds of fraudulent claims about efficacy and safety. And so, no, I don't support freedom of fraud. And I don't support the freedom to murder. I do support freedom of choice about things that don't involve other people. And so that's where I stand on that.
It comes down to informed consent.
Yeah.
It was not informed the way these people were pushing this out with propaganda and lies. And if they could actually research this stuff and make their own decisions about it, most people wouldn't choose it.
And they weren't too good on the consent side either. Let's be honest about that.
Epstein Island says, in 2016, I saw signs on a Catholic school stating that children couldn't attend without having a flu shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of blindness that is across the board on a lot of these different things. So, yeah. And we got one more, I think.
Jerry Alatalo says, Iran is seeking to end the war with the U.S. and Iran, quote, with dignity, the country's president said on Sunday.
Yeah, well, the dignity would be to just end it, and we'd all be grateful if they would do that on both sides. Well, the question, I thought this was a great question. This is from the Free Thought Project, and it's actually an article from Truth Out. Headline says, what do authoritarians fear the most? Their answer is people who stick up for each other. I think that's very important, and it is true. But I think that it's also important to understand that, like so many things, culture and politics and so many things, and even a community that hangs together and sticks up for each other, that is all downstream from our Christian faith. It's all downstream from religion, which sets up your worldview. And so when you look at this, I think a lot of this is typical. It doesn't necessarily only come from Christians, but it is true that Christians who have faith, that faith triumphs fear. That was what was so disappointing about seeing all these churches close. It was just an admission of being faithless, not trusting God and what he could do. Most reliable form of resilience is not individual wealth. It's not distant institutions, but solidarity in the local community. And I agree. But it is downstream, for the most part, from our faith in Christ. Even before Trump launched a war on Iran, his presidency had heightened the strain on millions of people in the U.S., struggling with high prices and precarious work. And of course, all that had been there since the COVID psyop. Higher prices at the gas pump made the war-related surge in energy costs visible to all. Less apparent are the disruptions in global fertilizer supplies resulting from the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. Combined with the impact of tariffs, fertilizer shortages could cut food supplies and really make food unaffordable for many. Converging shocks are testing our community. So why community matters now more than ever, they point out. We need to look at things that are going to give us community resilience, like the ability to withstand abrupt shocks like a natural disaster. And what do we see in the mountains of North Carolina? We saw the community coming together, and what did we see the government doing? Even local government came in. You had the Mennonites, the Amish, and a lot of other groups who came in and started building homes. And then you got the local building inspector coming out. I'm sorry, that's not up to code. You don't have any electricity running to that, even though we don't have electricity running to this area. And you don't have running toilets and all the rest, so we can't let you live in that. And made them tear it down. But they kept at it. And even though the government was not helping them, even though the government was an obstacle for them, they still came together as communities. And many of the people that were doing that, it was because of their faith. And again, as I said before, faith triumphs over fear. One of the most common phrases in the Bible is fear not. And we shouldn't fear. Why? Because we know we have the eternal big picture, and we put everything into that context. That makes all the difference in the world. Change happens when people act together, rooted in communities, connecting at scale. And again, this is why they want to have digital ID, why they want to have control of the internet and control of communications. If you're at war with someone, and they are at war with us, make no mistake about it, what do you want to do? Well, you want to disrupt their communications, you want to disrupt their mobility. They're working on all of those things right now. Community is how people share resources when systems fail. It's how we protect one another when institutions cause harm. And it's how we generate the power needed to challenge injustice and to build alternatives. So, question is, what does this look like in America? We've seen the Amish do barn raisings and so forth, but it's not just limited to them. Here's another example. It's not Amish people. This is in North Dakota. And you had a farmer there who was out in the process of running his tractor and harvesting the crops on his combine. It caught fire. And as he's fighting the fire, he had a heart attack, went into cardiac arrest. And so as he's in the hospital with a lot of other complications from that, his neighbors started talking about it, and they got together to cut 1,000 acres for him. Neighbors, friends, and family brought 11 combines, 6 grain carts, and 15 semis to get his wheat and canola into the bin. When they heard about his situation, they immediately started coordinating in an effort to help him out. One person said, I talked to a couple of farmers, got their equipment, then other people started calling, and we had equipment offered from all over the place in the county and their workers to go with it. If they would have let the crops go unharvested, it would have created a huge loss for the family, and they might have lost their farm. They knew they just had to help the family out. Everybody knows the family. They're good people and good in the community, and just the kind of farming way of life, too. You help your neighbor out when you need it, and you don't expect anything in return. And so if you're we have another example here, actually, that's not on a farm. I mean, that's the kind of thing that they talk about in this piece from Free Thought Project, was how people will get together, and they gave some examples in other countries, how, somebody needed to build a house, and they just would ask their neighbors and help them to build a house. And then you would return the favor when somebody else needed something like that. But that's kind of what the Amish do with barn raising. And you see people here, when they see that somebody has a need like that, they all come together in that community. There is that, folks, is something, that's what we need to be focusing on. We're not going to change the nature of these evil, power-hungry, greedy people in Washington. They're there because that's the kind of person that Washington attracts. It attracts the lowest of our society, even though they may have the highest bank accounts. And so we're not going to get any solutions, especially not for our lives, from them. Here's another good example. This is a teenager who's working at Chick-fil-A. And he found $10,000 on the floor of the restroom, and he returned it. An 18-year-old Chick-fil-A employee in Kinston, North Carolina, found nearly $10,000 in cash on the restroom floor just days before Easter, gave every single dollar back, crediting his faith in Jesus for the decision. And they point out there's a moment where we need to choose between right and wrong when nobody is watching. That's when our faith is really tested. And that's what integrity really is. It's what do you do when people aren't watching you? So they said, but what about a person led by the Holy Spirit? Well, they stand firm and they never trade their faith for compromise or temptation. Jaden Cintron was just taking his usual break at Chick-fil-A, and he noticed 2 white envelopes on the floor beside the toilet. They had information on them that they were from a couple of banks, 2 different envelopes from 2 different banks. And inside the 2 of them combined, there was $9,833 in cash. Now, I don't know how you lose that. First of all, those are going to be pretty big envelopes. And fell out of his pants or something.
I was just going to the bathroom at Chick-fil-A and counted my $10,000. Oops, I must have left it.
Anyway, he picked them up and turned them in right away. The restaurant staff went through security footage trying to figure out who the money belonged to. No luck. But eventually the owner came back searching for his envelopes. And when the local TV station asked the 18-year-old why he didn't just keep the money, his answer was simple. He said, that's not what Jesus would have done. That's not what God would have wanted. The owner tracked Cintron down, the kid, the 18-year-old, and offered him $500 as a reward. He said no. He declined it more than once, actually. He told the man that he didn't expect anything for doing what his faith already had required of him. After several attempts, the teenager finally accepted it. But it said he knew what he was doing. He knew who he belonged to, and he was doing it because there was somebody who was watching him, right? Christ was watching him. And so the world will always give you reasons to compromise. Pressure will come, but don't let anything shake your relationship with God. And then on the other hand, we got a lot of people who loudly beat their chest about their Christianity, but they're blind and they're leading the blind as to what their words and their actions are actually saying about them. Exhibit A is Pete Hegseth. We talked about this last week, and of course, there's been even more about this. Glenn Beck has come to his defense, amazingly. But before we get to the pulpit fiction that he was giving everybody in terms of the prayer that he was leading, Pete Hegseth, rather than helping people, every time you look at this guy, I've never seen a more hateful person. He just exudes hate. He glories in lethality in terms of killing people. Pete Hegseth wants the D.C. Circuit Court to let him punish Mark Kelly, the senator, because he criticized him. And by the way, that is his job. He's on the committee that oversees the Defense Department. And what was his crime? Remember? Pete Hegseth got so upset about it because he said, don't follow illegal orders. Now, he didn't say that anything was illegal, although there was clearly a lot of illegal, criminal, immoral things that the Hegseth Defense Department and President Trump were doing, especially circling back around and killing people that were shipwrecked. But when asked directly, Mark Kelly said, well, I can't think of anything they did illegally. And what's even more amazing, I mean, these people are not even good liars or politicians, right? Because Pete Hegseth could have easily diffused this whole thing by saying, well, we're not doing anything illegal. And he would have been fine because Mark Kelly and the other people with him who put that ad together, when pressed, they were afraid to say anything. And I say afraid, they didn't want to say anything because they want to have those same powers when they assume the levers. And so they want to be able to do all that same stuff. They don't want to take that away. So again, he wants to punish this guy for pointing out that the law is king and not President Trump, a supposed king. And so according to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Kelly's status as a retired naval captain constrains what he is allowed to say in these other capacities, even though he is a senator and even though he sits on the Armed Forces Committee. The fact that he was at one point in time in the military means that he's still under Pete Hegseth's command. Isn't that amazing how foolish this guy is? Hegseth thinks that he has the authority to punish Kelly, a legislator whose job includes oversight of Hegseth's own department, because he criticized leadership of the Pentagon and the Trump administration's military policies. In February, a U.S. district judge has already shut this down. This guy was a George W. Bush appointee. He rejected the astonishing claim, deeming it inconsistent with the First Amendment, writes Reason magazine. Judge Leyen issued a preliminary injunction that barred Hegseth from, quote, giving effect, unquote, to a letter of censure that faulted Kelly for saying things that irked Hegseth and from penalizing Kelly by reducing his retirement grade and pension. Now Hegseth is asking, he's appealing this. He didn't like what that judge said, so now he's appealing it to another court, the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. He wants them to override that injunction, reiterating his argument that retired military officers are subject to punishment, including criminal prosecution, for political speech that he unilaterally deems as, quote, prejudicial to good order and discipline in the armed forces. What a horrible, horrible, bloodthirsty tyrant this guy is. I really resent him associating himself with Christ. It's most un-Christ-like of all the officials, and he's the one who has these symbols, tattoos all over his body about that. In an amicus brief that was filed on Friday, there's an amicus brief, listen to this, folks, 73 former admirals, generals, and service secretaries who held positions under presidents of both major parties emphasized the alarming implication of War Pete's argument. Kegbreath has taken the unprecedented step of punishing a U.S. senator and a retired Navy captain for accurate statements of law and for criticisms of federal policy, they noted. No retired service member could be lawfully sanctioned for these statements, least of all one whose public office requires that he speak on these issues. He is a senator, and he sits on the U.S. Armed Forces Committee, so he is supposed to talk about these issues. If Hegseth's vendetta against Kelly were allowed to proceed, the brief from 73 former admirals, generals, and service secretaries said that it would chill public participation by veterans everywhere. So, you speak out against the political policies of War Pete, he's going to reduce your rank, reduce your pension, and do everything else that he can to attack you. As a matter of fact, we go back and we look at Pam Bondi, who is now no longer the Attorney General, but back in 2024, she had this to say. She said, military officers are trained not to carry out unlawful orders, and they know that they may be held criminally liable if they do carry out such orders. That was before she became a Trump zombie herself. Our laws are clear, says Reason. You can refuse illegal orders. That's absolutely right. And that's all they were saying in the video. But Trump went crazy. He screamed in all uppercase letters, seditious behavior at the highest level. And so the amen chorus behind him at the time, people like Alex Jones and all the other people who now separated themselves somewhat from him, at least for the moment, started calling them the seditious six. No, it's actually Pete Hegseth who is seditious against the Constitution. So Trump said, this is seditious behavior at the highest level. Each of these traitors to our country should be arrested and put on trial. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. I am the law. I am the king, right? He doesn't recognize the Constitution or anything else standing over him. We have seen that on every single issue with this guy. So again, they could have said, our orders are not illegal, but they knew the orders are illegal. They know that we know the orders are illegal, and they know that we know that their orders are illegal. Hence the intimidation that is there. So hopefully that's going to be shut down. Meanwhile, you got Pete Hegseth, who, as I pointed out last week, quoting the fake Bible verse from Pulp Fiction. And it was it's kind of a paraphrase with some additional stuff in it from Ezekiel 25:17. And I said, when I played it, I said, he's saying that's Caesar 25:17. It's like, what is he even talking about? Well, the Combat Search and Rescue Team, CSAR, they pronounce that as Caesar. They paraphrased Ezekiel 25:17. And so he said, and the prayer reads, pray this with me, please. And so he reads this out to everybody. I said, this is like one of those moments with Michael Flynn, where he reads this plagiarized prayer of this New Age false prophetess, Elizabeth Clare Prophet, I think is what she called herself. And he, was somebody put together a clip, and Flynn says a phrase, and then you can see her saying the same phrase, or vice versa. Maybe she says it first, and then he says it. But they were saying exactly the same thing. And what he was saying was pretty close to it. Neither one of them, and not the Combat Search and Rescue Team, none of them actually go back to Ezekiel 25:17. Not that that is anything important, as a matter of fact. That's not what the Bible is about. The Bible is not about going through and finding things that you can, imprecatory statements that you can threaten your enemies with. That's not what the Bible is about. And yet it is for Pete Hegseth. And you got Glenn Beck out there saying, shame on these people. They left out the fact that, Pete knew that this is a paraphrase that's put together by the Combat Search and Rescue Team. They left that out. Shame on them.
Pete Hegseth got up and he paraphrased, and he said, I'm paraphrasing Ezekiel 25:17. You may not know this. If you watch Pulp Fiction, Quentin Tarantino took this and wrote this into a into a massive monologue, built this whole monologue around Ezekiel 25:17. The path to righteousness, of a righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequalities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger to those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know my name is Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee.
Actually, that's enough of that anyway, because there's nothing sacred about anything that Quentin Tarantino does. So instead of it being Ezekiel 25:17, it was actually Tarantino 1995. And it's not even worth 1995. But that was the stupidity of this. And so now Glenn Beck decides that he needs to defend War Pete on that. But I said, that's not the context, for him saying, well, this is actually, we've taken the Bible and we've paraphrased it, and it's very much like Pulp Fiction. Probably the people who did that because of Pulp Fiction. And so he treats that as a serious prayer. I said, here's the real context. And I tweeted out retweeted what Glenn Beck had, and I commented, I said, well, here's the actual context that Glenn Beck is missing. War Pete's whole theology is a bad paraphrase of the Bible, not just of Ezekiel 25:17, and it is a bad paraphrase of Christ's teaching as well. The Bible is not his mandate to curse and kill people that he hates. What a perverted version of the gospel. Everything that War Pete does, every time he does a press conference, he takes God's name in vain and blasphemes Christ. And I say he takes his name in vain. He's not out there swearing using Jesus' name, but he is calling himself a Christian while he's out there doing these imprecatory statements against everybody and everyone, saying, we're going to kill people, and we're going to do it because God's on our side. Well, not only is this is not just one isolated scene, but this is in the movie. This is something I'd forgotten, but Travis pointed out to me. In the movie, it's part of the character arc of Samuel L. Jackson character. And what he does is, at the very end of the movie, is he would always recite that, just like Pete Hegseth. Well, here's some Bible verses, and this is why I'm going to kill you, because you're bad and I'm good, or something like that. And so at the end of the movie, Samuel L. Jackson looks at it and he goes, well, maybe I got this wrong. Maybe I'm the bad guy.
Well, there's this passage I got memorized. Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the inequities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who in the name of charity and goodwill shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers. And you will know I am the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon you. I've been saying that for years. And if you heard it, that meant your I never gave much thought to what it meant. I just thought it was some cold-blooded Well, I popped a cap in his But I saw some this morning made me think twice. See, now I'm thinking, maybe it means you're the evil man, and I'm the righteous man. And Mr. 9mm here, he used to shepherd protecting my righteous in the valley of darkness. Or it could mean you're the righteous man and I'm the shepherd. And it's the world that's evil and selfish. Now, I'd like that. But that ain't the truth. The truth is, you're the weak and I'm the tyranny of evil men. But I'm trying, Ringo. I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd.
Now he takes the gun down and he lets him go.
Go.
Still waiting for Pete Hegseth to say, well, I'm trying real hard to not be the evil guy. I don't see any signs of that happening yet. So, He needs to be in our prayers. We're supposed to pray for
he'd
him.
more be celebrating, yeah, I'm the tyranny of evil men. All right.
And I've got a 45, and this thing is highly lethal.
We're going to kill him, and that's the way it should be.
Well, as they like to talk about the poisoners of men, again, we got a couple of people who were responsible for the poisoning of a lot of people. Al Mohler and Franklin Graham taking opposition. Now, Al Mohler's had enough of Trump's nonsense, and he actually called him out on his AI stuff, saying it was blasphemous. Well, again, I don't know what the greater crime is. Is it worse to put up something that compares you to Jesus Christ, or is it worse to tell people in the authority of a Christian leader that you have responsibility to inject yourself with Kool-Aid, to love your neighbor? That is what Al Mohler was telling people. Thank you for joining us. Have a good day. The common man. They created Common Core to dumb down our children. They created Common Pass to track and control us. Their Commons Project to make sure the commoners own nothing. And the communist future. They see the common man as simple, unsophisticated, ordinary. But each of us has worth and dignity, created in the image of God. That is what we have in common. That is what they want to take away. Their most powerful weapons are isolation, deception, intimidation. They desire to know everything about us while they hide everything from us. It's time to turn that around and expose what they want to hide. Please share the information and links you'll find at thedavidknightshow.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. If you can't support us financially, please keep us in your prayers. thedavidknightshow.com.